Hey, this is Madalyn Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. First up is actually a little bit of news about Spaces. X News Daily posted during the week that live chat might be coming to X Spaces. Now, this is great on a lot of levels, right? This is actual recognition, for a start, that Spaces exists and that they might actually be adding something to it. What do you think of it?
Yeah, because Elon did reply to this post. So y'all might have heard last week, if you're live streaming on the platform, there's now a chat box they've added, which I think was super smart. They really needed that because previously the way you would chat in a live stream was never good. You know, when it was Periscope, it wasn't that great. And then when live streaming was still something you could do here on the X, previously the Twitter platform, if you wanted to be more interactive, you really just had to type a comment in the post like we do here. As soon as Suze started, because she's the host, there's the purple card with the start of this chat. And when we're doing the chat box, we're commenting in there. It's not that easy to do. I know a lot of people get confused by it and don't realize that that's where the conversation is taking place while you're listening to audio. But with them doing this for live streams, people are saying, hey, what about adding this to Spaces? And Elon, if you look on the screenshot of this post, Elon says, yeah, live video and audio should be the same software stack and have the same features. So it's like, that could be really interesting. Suze, I think, and I'm sure you would agree, that if we had more of a chat box, an interactive chat box while we're here doing live audio, that we would see more interactions going on. Because otherwise, here on mobile, if you're on mobile, you have to tap the little purple bubble at the bottom right and tap in there. And it's a little confusing, especially for people that are newer to the platform. Don't you think a chat box would just make things a lot easier? Because we know what a chat box is. I mean, when we think of like Zoom and other platforms we've all been using for a long time for video, we're used to having a little box on the side to be chatting.
Yeah, and I think it's not instantly obvious, the little purple speech bubble in the corner on mobile, as to kind of what it is. You either need it explained as to what it is if you've not been in a space before, and it is kind of tricky. It's only kind of attached to the main card, if you like, for the space. So that's where the conversation is happening. But as you say, we'd be far more aware of it if it was actually on the screen while we're live via mobile. Now, from the look of some of these comments, it felt as though they were very much suggesting it should be added to desktop to me. And potentially, that was maybe what they were talking about. I wonder where it would go on the mobile interface, although thankfully that wouldn't be my design problem to solve. So that's cool. But it is quite busy on the mobile screen, isn't it? So I don't know where it would fit. Whereas I can see that if you're listening to and spinning up Spaces from the desktop, that the chat version, as you say, would be quite recognisable and common, and people would understand it because we have all used the chat on Google Meet, Zoom, Teams, all of those different things. And, it's not dissimilar. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting. I remember when we were talking about whether or not they should add chat to Spaces at all, and I was very much against it for a month or so. But then actually I do really enjoy the chat that goes on in the Spaces chat here while we're live. It is another thing to keep an eye on. I've always got my notifications open on the desktop version while we're live via the mobile version so that I can interact. And, we've answered comments from people that have been listening that perhaps haven't wanted to take the mic or haven't been able to take the mic. That makes it really useful. So it is definitely a useful feature, and I did come round to it quite quickly once it was implemented. But yeah, it would be interesting to see a sort of proper live chat box that isn't quite so hidden and odd in terms of how to use it. I think that would be good.
I think we were concerned it would be too distracting before it became a feature, and we weren't quite sure, like, how would this look on the screen? Would people be spending more time typing away and chatting and not listening? We just weren't really sure in the beginning. But once the purple bubble came up out at the bottom right, and we could see it being used where people could ask questions or comment with each other. It's like, oh, this is actually great and not really distracting for anyone. So I think if it was more like a chat box, like what we're used to, and I just use Zoom as an example because everybody by now has used Zoom and you know what it's all about and you know the little sidebar chat box. And that's how I'm seeing the live streams. If you've not been on a live stream on Twitter, and even with the replay, it's not just live. You can go to a replay of a live stream here on the X platform and it pops up with everything that was in the chat box. So, which is really cool that they're like storing it and it becomes available after the fact. And I think it will do a few things for us if we have the same thing here in Spaces. Number one, less confusing. I think people could have more dialogue, discussion, and also after the fact, if you missed a space, you can see what were people talking about that could not grab the mic and talk on stage, and seeing all the different things that are going on. And so I really am liking that with the live streams that have the new chat box, and I'm missing them live. Then I just go and I can watch the video, but I can also watch the interaction that went on in the chat box, and it'll just show the whole thing after the fact. So you can kind of scroll through and see what people were talking about. So I think it'd be a great idea. I would love to see them implement this.
Yeah, and I do think it's encouraging that Spaces has been mentioned as well, that we're actually seeing that it's something that they might work on, and that Elon's actually mentioned audio separate to video in his response to this. So he kind of responded, yeah, live video and audio should be the same software stack and have the same features, which is really quite interesting. And Morgan actually made a comment during the week that perhaps this is why they actually haven't worked so much on Spaces. We know that Elon is very concerned with video and wants to go heavy on video and probably get in there as a competitor to YouTube. Good luck to him with that. So perhaps they are focusing on getting that live video feature up and running and as great as it can be before they then sort of take that over to the audio side. We did have a bit of a chat about it last week about whether or not actually social audio or audio on the platform would just become video without the visuals. But, in this respect, potentially he's building one thing up, but then will duplicate it or replicate it for the other medium, which is another way of looking at it. So, very interesting to see. Quite encouraging to see Elon actually just having typed the word audio. I'm quite encouraged.
We like that. So as long as he likes it, then that's a good thing because that's good for all of us.
It certainly is. Now, this next one is actually switching from social audio into podcasting a little bit. There's an article that I came across in one of the many podcasting substacks that I am now subscribed to around a scam that is actually targeting podcasters. It's not something I'd heard of before, and it's quite shocking. This guy called Johnny Jet, who I hadn't heard of before, he's a travel influencer, and he basically has handed over essentially all of his Facebook details and given someone else control of his Facebook page, all because he responded to an email that invited him to be a guest on a podcast for a price, for $3,000. Now, all the way along, I love the way that he's written this blog basically to highlight to other people that this is a scam and this is happening, and that if you are being offered high price tags to become a guest on a podcast that potentially you've never heard before, you might want to think twice about that. I love the fact of how honest he is in this blog, and how all the way through he goes that there were so many red flags. This was too good to be true, and I knew it. And, he is really honest about it. But I mean, it's shocking, isn't it, Madalyn? I did want to talk about it in order to make sure that other podcasters are aware of it, because it seems to be something that's flying a little bit under the radar.
It is shocking. I'm so glad you found this. And this is good just for everyone to know about, not just necessarily whether or not you're a podcaster, because a scam like this could happen to anyone. It's just right now it seems to be they're going after people to come be on a podcast and, ooh, we'll give you some money. It sounds enticing. And in the end, they're just trying to get you on a chat to take over your Facebook. and people are not realizing that what's being done to them until it's too late. And then they no longer can access. And they're not giving out their passwords. They're just giving, click here. Okay, because this is how we're going to be doing this when we have you on this is like a pre-podcast, like, let's go through the steps.
It's quite clever because it's all set up. You are totally, as the person being scammed, thinking about the fact that they're helping you to make sure that everything is going to be great technically on the live stream. They're going to pay you this money, so you want to make sure that you sound great, and you want to make sure you've got the right bit of software installed on your computer and all of those kind of things. So what they do is they send out this invite, and then they set up a Zoom call where they can walk you through what you need to do on Facebook in order to be part of this this podcast recording. And in doing that Zoom call, they ask you to hand over control of your screen, which at this point, this is where this guy kind of went, hey, wait a minute, this isn't happening. But he had already created a new profile handle and a new account, he said, the guy was just so slick, and they'd also affiliated themselves with a brand that he knew. And so he felt like every step of the way there was something saying to him that it could be possible, and that it kind of felt like it was a bit odd, but it was all right. So I think they're a very slick operation. And at that point, he's kind of created this profile where these scammers have now got access to his name, all his details, everything that's kind of on Facebook, and other people that he's then gone along and found. Someone on TikTok had been scammed in the same way, but the podcast name was different, but it was a similar scam, and they literally lost their Facebook account access to it. And in the end, there was an awful lot of kind of spam advertising, sponsored posts and things going out under this woman's name that she had absolutely nothing to do with, and she could do nothing about it. And true to form, Meta weren't very interested, apparently. So it's just too easy and too horrible to hear.
Absolutely. Is eye-opening. I definitely encourage everybody to read this article because, again, it's not just for podcasters. This is just basic scamming that's being done. It could be done in a million different ways to attract you to have a call like this and not realizing that they're trying to scam you by taking over your social media account. It reminds me of this YouTube account I came across earlier this year that I'm absolutely in love with. I'm sure some of y'all have heard of it because they have millions and millions of subscribers. It's called Scammer Payback. And it's because how like there's the texts or the emails of scammers trying to get you to call them and they act like they're legit. Oh, we're PayPal, and oh, this amount accidentally came out of your account. Now you got to put it back in and send us gift cards and this, and people fall for it. And I had no idea that, you hear about some of the scams and we're like, oh, we're smart enough. We're not going to fall for that. Some of these videos I've watched, is scary how they trick you in so many different ways. So that's why I'm so glad you shared this article, Suze, because scamming happens all over the world every single day. And as smart as we all are or think we are, we could easily fall into these traps. And in reading that article you had shared, it was like, wow, because these were like, in this case of the article, like legit podcasters being offered several $1,000s from what they thought were legit podcasters. And they were like, well, it might be a scam. Let me research. They researched and like, okay, this looks legit because of the names that were being used that were legit. These people were very smart people that got scammed. And it's like scary to be like, and you know how embarrassing that's got to be for them and for them to come forward and share their story. It's good for all of us to know and be aware that things like this happen all the time.
A big thank you to our sponsors, Zealous.
I love Zealous. This has been one of the coolest tools that we've come across, and so we just had to make them a sponsor. If you're like us and you're doing spaces, maybe even podcasts, this tool makes it so easy to repurpose the content so you can use it like audiograms. Suze, I love how you keep creating these awesome audiograms after our space ends, and it's such a great way to keep the conversation going, take little snippets and put it out there.
We've wanted to create audiograms for all the different episodes that we've done over the last 2 years, and it just takes up more time, but Zealous has made it really straightforward. And actually this week, my new thing that I checked out with them is their new AI tools. So actually what they're testing out, it's in beta over there at the moment, but you can ask it to suggest where chapter headings should go within your audio, and also to create things like show notes and blog posts from the transcript of your audio, which it can create for you, all of which is super useful.
Yeah, go check it out at allthingsaudiopodcast.com/zealous. They have a free trial. Highly recommend it. We both did the free trial, Suze and I, and we fell in love with it.
I had a quick look back over what's been going on in social audio. We've been doing this space a fair while, and we do want to update our listeners here in the space and on the podcast with a bit of news about all things audio. But before we do that, I thought it'd be really interesting to look back and see what we were talking about this week in 2021 and this week in 2022, because it really has been quite a roller coaster ride, and we always said that it would have been a roller coaster ride. We were there. We've been strapped in for it, right? So in November 2021, in this week, we were talking about the sound quality of replays. Danny Singh, who used to be on the Twitter team and was very heavily involved in spaces and developing spaces, was asking people what they felt about the sound quality of the replays. Madalyn, I know at one point you were concerned about the sound quality when they first came out, that it wasn't quite what you'd like it to be. We were also talking about Oprah and Adele, who had gone live over on Clubhouse and blown the place up. And captions were about to be rolled out to be tested over on Clubhouse on all the different variations of audio that they had going on over there at the time. We were also chatting about Spotify having a slate of new live shows on Green Room that they just announced. And we talked a little bit about an app called Racket, which we both quite liked at the time, which was kind of a studio setup, a little bit like Riverside kind of vibe, really, but somewhere where you could go and create a kind of radio style broadcast within an app, a social audio app. So that was 2021. So we moved in like on 12 months. And as you can imagine, November 22 was actually quite different. So we were talking about the Twitter execs that were, in inverted commas, leaving at the time. Elon had done a massive space the week before, so we were still chatting about that. He'd done the Q&A space, advertising and the future. The stats that we had at the time were that 635,000 people had tuned in live, and it was massive. So we were talking a lot about that. We were also talking about the Blue Verified relaunch that was coming back at the end of November. We were talking about the check marks and how that was different under Elon. We were still calling it Twitter at that point. And we'd heard that Amazon had cut thousands of jobs at Alexa. So the engineering department at Alexa, there were a lot of job cuts, and we wondered what the impact of that might be on Amazon AMP. Now, here we are in November 2023. Several of those that I've just mentioned, Racket is no more. Spotify did finally move from being Green Room to Spotify Live, but then is no more. And Amazon AMP is also no longer here. I think what it shows, Madalyn, is that over the weeks and over the years, the amount of social audio news has most certainly decreased, hasn't it? And I know we've felt that between the two of us.
It's reduced dramatically. We used to always have so much news to share that sometimes we just didn't share at all because it was overload of how much. There were so many different apps and tools and platforms emerging, and it's changed dramatically. And it's great hearing you talk about like the things we were discussing here in this space on this podcast 2 years ago and a year ago. And look at where we're at now. Is the landscape has changed so much.
The landscape has changed and the platform has changed. This is no longer Twitter. And as much as we hate to say it, this is no longer Twitter Spaces. So we are now on X, and this is now X Spaces. And I think everybody here in the space and everyone listening on the podcast will know people who have left the platform and are no longer here for their own reasons, for a whole myriad of reasons regarding the actual platform in itself. And myself and Madalyn aren't immune from that. And we've had a discussion about what we should do with All Things Audio, which we've obviously absolutely adored and loved over the last few years. Brent, I see that sad emoji. Don't get too sad. Yes, we are going to reduce the amount of All Things Audio that we are going to be doing in the future, but we're hoping to do that in order to bring you the value that we hope we have always brought to you. And at the moment, we don't feel we're able to do that every week because there's just not enough news for us to spend a whole hour talking about. And we don't want to just spin up a space and, have the odd little chat and chit chat type thing. We loved it when we could empower other people to take the mic and, go away from our space and perhaps start their own space. And perhaps we're feeling that this isn't quite the platform that we want to encourage people to do that on right now. So the plan after today is that All Things Audio will become a monthly space here on X, and that will start in December. We will basically go live right here as we are doing right now on the first Wednesday of each month. And yeah, it will be different, very different for me and Madalyn, who have spent every week doing this. It's been a long time, and it has not been an easy decision. But yeah, this is where we're at right now, isn't it, Madalyn?
Yeah, well, yeah, this is not something we just decided out of left field to do. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. Like, do we have enough content to keep this as a weekly format? There just hasn't been as much news. There's less platforms with social audio. And while we love talking about podcasting, we've been podcasters a long time, each of us, there's enough podcasts about podcasts. So we don't want to turn it into that. We like bringing it up from time to time and talking like we did last week, talking about the gear, which, is fun. But, we like the focus of being all different types of ways to do social audio. So we think once a month is a good format for now, and that could change, but that's what we're going to do starting on December the 6th. So it'll be the first Wednesday, very easy to remember, the first Wednesday of the month. And we're going to give that a go for a bit and see how that is. And Suze, I feel like we'll have more to discuss over the course of an hour when we're doing it once a month. But also, we're not leaving the platform. And as news arises, we'll be sharing it in our feed. So always be, following our feeds for the latest in social audio news.
Yeah, that's right. We're not completely disappearing off the platform just yet, but it's difficult to know where X is going and where Elon is really taking it. And I do, I can hear myself saying, I remember with all the changes and everything, we said, we will be here until they pull Spaces off the air. But that was on Twitter, and we're really not on Twitter anymore. And I feel that every time I come onto the platform. And we want to add value to people. We want to continue to make sure that the content that we prepare and that we then present to everybody is useful. So we feel like this is the best way forward to do that. So it's a bit of a watch this space. And literally watch this space. I think I've said that before. Watch this space, listen to this space, and we will most certainly be back. So make sure that you are following us so that you know when those monthly spaces are happening. Madalyn, we did want to talk a little bit about communities.
Yeah, I had posted a couple days ago that there's this new iOS version that has rolled out with all these new features for communities. And I was very excited when communities became a thing a while back. It was before Elon. It's a feature, if you don't realize it. It's on your sidebar menu for your own desktop, if you're on mobile. It's also in your menu. And you can create communities. And it's kind of cool. I was really excited when this feature came out, but it didn't get much love. And it was very basic. And the problem I had, and we do have an All Things Audio community, by the way. The thing I didn't like about it was too basic. It didn't have hardly any features. But at one point, you could host spaces from it. And that was amazing. That was pre-Elon. But then they took that away. And so, it's like, okay, this would be a cool feature to use, but if we can't do much with it and we can't do spaces anymore in that, then what's the point? Well, now it's getting all of this love. Personally, I feel like it took them way too long. And I'm just not that interested anymore. I have a Twitter Smarter, renamed a Smarter X community. We have our All Things Audio. And while it's nice to have that, is it worth doing when we went for so long with really no real features other than a dedicated spot on the platform where if you join the group, we can converse in there? So I don't know. I'm really frustrated that it just did not really come to fruition. Now, all of a sudden, out of the blue, they're like, okay, we have these sorting options. You can pin something on here. You can take I was going to say Twitter list, I guess it's an X list, and put that into your community. They're adding all these features. I just feel like it's a little too late for me to be all that interested, but I'm definitely curious to know what you all think. And Suze, does this make you want to spend more time in the All Things Audio community that we started way back when and do more with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was such a big thing to get the community approved and to, be given that space on the platform when Twitter first started them. We had to apply and we had to send in, you had to jump through all the hoops. You had to do a graphic and a proper description and you had to have rules and all of these things. And we did all of that and it got approved. And actually we sat on it for a good couple of months because myself and Madalyn didn't want to just have another community. Again, we wanted to add value. We wanted to make sure we had the time to spend in there and really spend with the people that had bothered to sign up to be part of the community. Audio is a great way of bringing people together. So we always wanted that social audio element in there. And I feel like we only did it for like a couple of weeks and then it wasn't there anymore. But I did do a couple of like community only spaces and spoke to quite a few people who then joined in with the conversations that were going on in there. We can see how well audio brings people together, right? People listen to podcasts and people sign up for all these different subscriptions around podcasts now to get extra content, all of those different things. People feel like part of a community when they're listening, even though they're listening probably on their own, miles and miles away from other people that are listening to the same thing. You still feel part of that group of people. So, having communities around audio seems like a great idea to me. And as you say, it's sort of faded so distantly that I think anyone who didn't know it was there in the first place is probably none the wiser, to be quite honest. And it will probably take quite a lot to pull it back up and remind people that it's there. And actually, as admins of a community, we kind of need to work out what to do with it. Like what is their thought behind having these different communities if we've not got any different ways of kind of connecting with people and easy ways to draw those people together. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I now wonder how X sees communities within the wider spectrum of what they're doing on the platform. Interesting to see them pick it up again.
Yeah, definitely. And not just pick it up, but like, here's a whole bunch of features. Have at it. So I don't know, quite interesting. But there is a new iOS update. So if you want to see these new features, you do need to download the new version of iOS. Also, if you don't know and you are on iOS, something that's fairly new, they just implemented, and they used to do it a long time ago, and then they stopped, is when you go in the App Store and you go and update your app, instead of it just saying, we squash bugs in this update, like it specifically lists all the things they've updated, which is really refreshing. So you know exactly what's new about this version. So all these things they list in this post that we have in the Nest, you should see that in the App Store. So just FYI. I see we have a guest speaker here. We got Tristan. How you doing?
Can I'll shed a voice tear as well as a...
Yeah,
but it's not the end.
I know. It's not the end. It is a turn in the road, is what I said to Madalyn yesterday.
A pivot.
We were discussing.
It's a pivot.
Yeah, it's a pivot. Think the Friends gif. Yeah,
Exactly.
We've got a sofa.
Pivot.
We're dealing with it.
No, you're just so popular and so busy that you only have the time to sum it up, and it'll be a better product because it'll be refined. So yeah, we'll think of it the other way. The one piece I was going to ask, and I've got some friends who've been doing a lot more in community now, and figuring that community is involved. Like the communities that were there before sort of got disbanded, not communities on here, just in sense on the internet, got disbanded and broken up and automated. Almost the tools became so that people could sort of self-organize. And we've sort of got past that people aren't really very good at self-organizing once they get to a certain scale. And we need to bring the community organizers and the community people who know how to build communities again. And this comes on two sides. Is one, for tools for those people and helping those people move forward. But the apps themselves seem to have collapsed in the fact that they've stopped teaching us how to use new functions. I think Twitter for a long time, and there are other apps like we have comments on Clubhouse and other things, that they live at this leading edge, and then they forget to teach you how to use a new feature. They don't roll out a new feature; they just put it out, and if people don't use it themselves, they think it doesn't work. Because all these features that we've talked about, or you've talked about, sorry, that it's never been released, it's never been promoted. I feel it's never been taught how should it be used, or what's the good way of using it, and that this is an actual core part of a product. And so it does sort of fade away if the community doesn't work out their own way of doing it. And maybe that's the thing, that applications and communities need to be better at teaching and actually rolling out features and teaching people, not just to get it.
I love your take on it. That is very well said. I always say when it comes to this platform, you don't know what you don't know. I could probably show everyone here 10 things you didn't know you could do on this platform, because there's just so many little things to it, and they don't tell you when. And all the platforms do this too. I mean, I remember back in the early Facebook days, it'd be like all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is different on Facebook. And what was so funny, I used to, I've been teaching social media all the way back to 2005, back in the early days of social media. And I can't tell you how many times I would be like on a Zoom call, walking through, showing somebody my screen, walking through step by step how to do something on social media. And Facebook was notorious with this. And I'd be walking through like an example, something like how to do some basic admin stuff on your Facebook page. And I'd be walking them through, and it's like, wait a minute, they moved everything around and be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to show somebody who's hired me to help them. And Facebook just rearranged everything. And like real quick, while I'm on a live Zoom, I'm having to figure out, okay, wait a minute, let me try clicking here. Okay, they just moved this. All right, so go here. This is the new place you click to get to this. And all these platforms do stuff like that. They make changes. They don't tell anybody. So it's the people like myself and other people that are on social media day and night that figure these things out and take a screenshot and say, hey, everybody, by the way, here's how you do this now. This just changed. They don't make things obvious. And I've always disliked that about these platforms. The only thing I will say, it was kudos to Facebook a long time ago when they hired Mari Smith, who was already known at the time as the Facebook expert. This was a long time ago. They're like, this lady knows so much about our platform. We should hire her to go around the country and teach small business owners how to use our platform. And I remember I've known Maury a long time, and I was so excited for her. I'm like, that's so cool. I wonder, and I was saying to myself, I wonder if Twitter would ever like do that with all the people who help everybody use their own platform, because they don't tell you anything. They just make changes and go here. And you figure it out, and most people don't figure it out because they don't realize there's this new thing. I know a lot of people didn't know about communities for the longest time. And it wasn't obvious. I always jump on everything when it's new, but then the hard part is getting people to use it. I remember when Spaces was new, I was one of the early beta hosts. And for the longest time, it was not easy trying to explain to people how to do live audio on your mobile device. Sometimes those of us that are a little bit more techier than the average person, we just take it for granted. I always feel like, well, if I can do it, then certainly everybody else knows about this thing too, and they know how to do it. And then you're pleasantly surprised when you realize, like, no, most people do not. Apparently, it's just a skill you have. So I'm always trying to realize and remind myself that when I learn these things, I want to just turn around and share it with everybody else, because most people probably did not realize there's this new thing you could do on the platform. And it makes me feel good to help people if I see something like, hey, by the way, here's something really cool you can do.
And actually, I think that, being an admin of a community, there's quite some skill to building, a successful community and making sure that, those rules that you write down that Twitter then approves for you and everything else are actually adhered to, and that everyone feels like it's a safe space and all of those things. That's quite a big deal, right? And I think, at least I think it's a big deal. And I think I felt the weight of the responsibility of that almost too heavily, and sort of thought, I don't want to start something that I can't finish or that I can't add value to people with. And, I'm sure lots of people who will just, set up a community and see what happens to it and all the rest of it. But for me, I felt like I needed to make sure that I knew what was going to be posted in there and make sure that I did know vaguely who was in there and what their interests would be, so that I could post things that would be relevant to them. And all of that takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of thinking through. And it's not just a natural skill, right? Madalyn, you're gifted in being able to spin up communities and draw people together. That's sort of what you do, but it's not something that everybody is able to do, right? So it's interesting that they put that as a kind of another feature right here.
Well, I think the biggest failure of this communities feature all this time that it's been available is they don't make it easy to get a notification when people are posting in there. And that was always my biggest frustration. It still is my biggest frustration, because while I like that we have this communities feature, it only works if you manually go into it. Well, who thinks every single day, like, you know what, I'm going to go tap on communities on the X platform today to see what's going on? We usually don't. We go to the home feed or our Twitter list or our profile page or our notifications, but we can't think of every single place to go. And I wish there was an easier way to get a notification. On Facebook groups, it works because you get notifications to groups that you join. So I've just never understood why they did not do that here. And next up, we have Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, how are you? How's NADPOMO going?
NADPOMO, National Podcast Postman. Today's day 15. We're right in the middle. And I want to thank you all for both mentioning that we could now take a list that we had and put it in a community, because I had a NADPOMO list and a NADPOMO community, but they were in their own silos, and now they're connected. So thank you.
Yay. That's one good feature that's come out this week. That was a good one, because y'all know I love Twitter lists, or X. What do we call them? X lists now? That's always been one of my favorite features on the platform that I cannot live without. So that was great to see. So did you already do it? Did you set it up?
I did it right now. When you were talking about it, I'm like, I didn't know we could do that. Click, 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 and it's done. And I wanted to just thank you. And then I also want to kind of give you some words of encouragement, because I'm seeing a lot of folks who are taking a bit of a breather during December from weekly chats or weekly things, and saying we're taking a break in December to kind of have a little family time, to kind of collect ourselves, to kind of figure out what's going on. And you'll see us back in January, or like you were doing, we're going to do it once a month. I feel like those of us who have been hyperactive on social for, 10, 15 years already, we've kind of hit a maturation stage where we're kind of tired of the antics, but yet we know the value that exists here because we've all met one another here and we all provide value to one another. So I don't want to lose the value, but we also want to set boundaries. And I think boundaries are healthy. It's not against anything. It's just what's going to be the best for us and how can we serve in a really meaningful way and also have things, time to pursue other things that could be the next thing that we can bring people along. Because that's the thing about what you and Suze are doing, what a lot of folks are doing is that we're the pioneers, right? And the pioneers and the early adopters are the ambassadors or become the ambassadors to others. And when do we have time to become the pioneers and early adopters so that we can be the ambassadors if we don't have the time? Because we need to invest time in those things as much as we spend time here and invest in, training up and lifting up everyone else so that they're aware of how they can use these tools and these platforms for their mission and their message. So kudos to you. You're not the only one doing this. I think it's good for us to take a collective pause and not lose sight of the value that's here, because there's so much value here, but also recognize the value of the time that we have in our own lives. So kudos to y'all.
Thank you, Jennifer. You always put things so well. Absolutely everything you said is exactly the reasons, why we're doing this. And I think it's an awareness of the landscape, an awareness of all the different changes, not only to the platform, but to social audio in general. It's not that we're not going to talk about it anymore. We still love it. And we still want to be able to bring those insights and those thoughts and opinions and talk to people about it and have guests on and all that kind of thing. But I think giving ourselves time to step back from it will allow us to immerse ourselves in it almost in a different way and bring more to the space when we are live here. And, it'll also give me a bit of time to go back over onto Clubhouse and fiddle about with chats again. And, because you do get so immersed in like the almost the hamster wheel of finding the content and doing the next thing that you find the things, but to actually experience them, as you say, there's only so much time, right? So it'll be good to actually get out there and get involved in other stuff again so that we can bring that back and report back as we always have done. And for anyone as well that wants to, both myself and Madalyn are on LinkedIn and we will be testing out LinkedIn audio events. I've been doing a few of them myself in line with the Substack work that I've been doing. But we may well head over there. We may well do something a bit different. We just don't know. We're willing to see where it takes us, but we do want to make a change, and we felt like this was kind of the right moment to do that. As you say, end of the year coming up and all of that. And did you say date? Of course, it's day 15 of NaPoWo. I mean, I think I might be -4 at the moment, Jennifer. I've still got time to catch up.
You've got the whole month. I am 27 behind on one of the 3 podcasts I'm doing, so I'm going to play double time on the catch up. So you're in good company.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. I've really loved it, though. I've loved doing my daily recordings again. I'm trying to push out that obstacle that they might not be interesting to other people to listen to, because that's not why I'm doing it.
It's like a vacation for my ears. I really am enjoying it.
And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening.
Bye, everybody.